Monsanto versus Nalguidan to start things off here. A Team Genji face-off. Nalguidan representing Latin America on behalf of fallen Brazilian player Race, and PNC, who also is on Team Genji. Monsanto, a player that a lot of players have been lauding for his technical play for a long time now, and I think in the past couple seasons he's really impressed us. I know TJ has become a very big fan of Monsanto, particularly for his interview prowess.
Yes, I think a lot of us became huge fans of him based on his guitar prowess last week as well, as he showed some expert skill, like giving his rendition of the Hearthstone theme on his own stream after the fact, which I was very impressed with myself. But I totally agree. I think his willingness to embrace awkwardness and embracing cringe is very, very satisfying to me. I've been enormously entertained by his spot in Hearthstone Grandmasters.
Oh yeah, and some people felt like, are the casters just bullying Monsanto? Monsanto has actually been tweeting publicly how much he enjoys talking to us in interviews.
Yeah.
And I think you've never really had the pleasure of interviewing Monsanto?
No, I actually did at our presser event. I did the interview with Monsanto there. So yeah, I have experienced it myself.
Great. Well, if he continues to win, perhaps that dream can become a reality. Going to game number 1, we have the Paladin versus the Hunter. Now, this was a matchup that I think was theory crafted before the Tombs of Doom wild set returning back into Hearthstone, the mid-set expansion for people who have not heard of it yet. Excuse me. Largely because of cards like Ragnaros and Call of the Wild putting a lot of pressure onto the Paladin and just kind of making it difficult for them to account for how much board clear they actually need, because there's just more damage from the hand that can be summoned back. So, I'm looking forward to see if Nalguidan can continue to add to that. He does have some interesting choices too, right? Putting things like mech and war gear back into it. So it seems to have a hybrid approach to what we saw Muzzy and Sand do last week, alongside some of the new cards that we've come to expect to be in this deck.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not a deck that we really saw in our kickoff show for Europe here, for the studio at least. I think this is a deck I expected to see some amount of. I also expected to see some amount of Holy Wrath Paladin, and that's a big reason why I expected to see some amount of Hunter coming back the other way, because this was already, I think, considered quite a powerful matchup here, just because of the consistent damage going through, the constant threat of the hero power, just big chunky minions creating board states. You now add Ragnaros the Fire Lord and Call of the Wild to that equation. That is a lot of late game power that you can put through. Like, Ragnaros on its own is, justifiable of a full board clear from the Paladin, because they cannot afford to tank that damage for a very long time.
Yep, 4 out of the 8 players in America has brought Reno Hunter this week, or Highlander Hunter, but there are some variable differences. The deck list that Nalguidan has looks like it doesn't have Zul'jin, although I'd be pretty surprised if it was the case. I'm not sure if it was a printing error.
Carry on, I'll count.
The deck list that they printed was printed in landscape mode instead of portrait, so it might have been cut off at the very end. But I'd be very surprised to put Call of the Wild and all this stuff in without actually having a Zul'jin. But maybe that's a call that Nalguidan's making based off the inspiration from
that is 30 cards.
So no Zul'jin.
No Zul'jin.
Interesting. Monsanto, he has pretty much the deck list that most people expect, which is the Emperor Thorson swap in, and then just keep everything else the same.
Yes, and we saw how that changed the dynamic of one matchup in particular, which was the Control Warrior matchup, where Pavel felt so pressured by the threat of 50 damage coming through in one turn that he decided to play the matchup very aggressively and try to overdraw Hunter Ace very, very aggressively as well. It was 3 draws on an Acolyte of Pain to burn 1 card, which is about as bad an exchange rate as you can get. You see here Nalguidan doing the much more conventional thing of denying card draw completely, but that is consistent with his position versus where Pavel thought he was at, whereas Nalguidan will feel that he has a good matchup here, so he does not have to do anything out of the ordinary. He can just curve through his deck, generate threats, deal damage, and he should be able to get over the line against this Holy Wrath Paladin.
Yeah, I think a lot of times those decisions are often colored by whether or not you feel like you need to take a risk or a very bold line of play, to say the least. And I think having the Holy Wrath Paladin overdraw, yes, you could hit this Shrivala, but it's unlikely. And even if they hit even one Holy Wrath, they still can kill you in a multitude of ways.
Right.
As players have shown us week over week.
To play with fire.
So Monsanto going to draw cards with the Flash of Light Pyromancer just to clear off a little bit of the board. No mech to stick for Nalguidan, which I have to imagine is a little annoying. But he does have a Dino Tamer brand in hand that he's willing to start preparing for and setting up. So, War Geared as a 5/5 tempo option. Also stops the Coin Thorson really easily.
It does, and I think that's a big deal. Although with Wing Blast in his hand and a Desert Spear in his hand, I think he always is going to have options to remove a minion if he needs to. But I was considering just the more immediate damage line of playing a Desert Spear and a Hero Power there, keeping the 1/1 in play, taking out the minion. But, of course, Nalguidan would just be saying, well, this is more damage out over time if I just play a 5/5 here and use it to hit my opponent in the face. Now Desert Spear Wing Blast can very efficiently take care of this Emperor.
Yeah. That baited arrow. Not really applicable right here. We have Desert Spear and Kill Command. I think Nalguidan's interested in just pushing damage as much as he can.
Yep.
Reasonably, of course.
Yep. Got to take care of this Emperor, but he has a nice way to do it. Of course, he wants to use the Wing Blast there because that's damage that he can't just send to face. Whereas the Kill Command he can hold back for the extra damage. And now the clock is going to accelerate very, very rapidly for Monsanto from this position. And I think anytime anyone plays against Highlander Hunter, no matter what level you play at, I think this is the one turn you've been conditioned to play around and think about what Dino Tamer Bran means for your turn.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder how severe of a reaction Monsanto wants to have. When you expect big damage, a lot of times, if it's coming from the hand, you're trying to play things like timeout. I have not really seen Paladins go for that in this position very often. And I kind of wonder in the back of my mind if Monsanto's going to go for the board clear, right? Because he does have an opportunity to just clear off this mech, prevent any more magnetic abilities from pressuring. Or he can just try to get ahead of it, but he doesn't have a board clear, right? A lot of times you can utilize timeouts so that your opponent has to extend more onto the board, right?
Move quickly.
And then you utilize Shrink Ray and Equality in order to clear up everything.
It's a huge call to make into a hand read or a percentage play, right? Say like, well, my opponent has X chance of having Dino Tamer Bran right now. But sight unseen, when you don't have the vision to just be staring at the Dino Tamer Bran in hand, using a timeout to present, functionally 0 damage, since you can clear that board very effectively anyway. It's such a big and risky call to make, but I do agree with you. It's certainly, when I've played Holy Wrath Paladin, I've thought about it on almost every turn 7 against Hunter. It's just like, do I just time out here so I don't take 8?
I've never seen it happen.
Yeah.
And I was actually playing some Highlander Hunter on ladder, right, just during my brief break while 8-bar was rotating in, and I actually did play this matchup, and I was hoping that they wouldn't play timeout. They never did, because I don't think they ever drew it. And I didn't have Dino Tamer Bran on curve. I just had it on, I drew it turn 10 eventually.
Right.
But it was just like one of those things where I was like, yeah, I hope they burn it right now.
Yeah,
because I don't have the brand.
I think that's the big kicker as well, is because they don't play taunts and they don't build a board presence that's ever going to make you trade with your Dino Tamer Bran. Even if they time outed on going into your turn 7, you would just play whatever other 2 cards you have in your hand that makes a board, and then you just Dino Tamer Bran them in the face next turn anyway, right? That damage being banked to face is always going to happen regardless of how many timeouts your opponent has. So I think it is a little bit of a trap a lot of the time.
Desert Spear being pretty nice for Nalguidan to make sure things like Subdue don't make Monsanto's life a lot easier. This is a pretty tough spot for Monsanto right now, because even if he does time out and whatnot, he still needs additional plays in order to get out of the situation. Shrivala is at 20 mana right now.
Yes, and that has also been discounted by Emperor Thorson at this point, so that is not much mana that's been invested into spells.
Yeah, it is kind of funny how it allows him to squeeze in more mana-efficient plays for the turn, but discounting the spells means Shrivala's discount isn't as isn't as prevalent.
Big risk, big downside, something that you have to consider in matchups where playing a mid-game Shivala for survival is a big part of your win condition. You do have to consider the impact that the Emperor discounts will have on your Shivala discounts.
I must move quickly.
Subdue, and Monsanto does have timeout. If he wants to try and be bold, he can just play Prismatic Lens right here. Oh, Holy Wrath, okay. Makes sense, clear the board, prevent any things like Kill Command and whatnot being active by itself.
Yeah, I think this is smart for kind of exactly the reason we were talking about. He spent almost every point of mana available that turn, I believe, casting spells, which I think is very important when he has that Shivala in hand, because I don't imagine a world, and I don't think Monsanto imagines a world where he wins this game without that Shivala coming down in the near future. So I think continuing to be efficient with the discounts is a very big thing that Monsanto's interested in right now.
Yeah, Subdue being used makes this high main a lot more appeasing in this position. I think Nalguidan probably is also even counting things like how much mana has been spent, because if he does play a high main, he's giving a target for things like Shivala to potentially come down.
Yep, sure. And
rush for lifesteal. Nalguidan actually legitimately has a line where he can just pressure through his hero power and direct damage.
You are not wrong. The issue he will have there is that he can't get this 1 damage from the weapon to go face without putting a minion in play.
Right.
So that does change his clock in some scenarios. I think there is likely to be a minion for Shivala to be rushed into, and as you said, Nalguidan as a top-level player will be counting the spells and the discounts, and he will have the good news that Shivala is some distance away from being playable right now.
Unless his Prismatic Lens draws the Shivala, but we know that it won't.
Yes.
Still 10 cards in the deck here. Lots of potentially big pickups from Monsanto. None bigger, perhaps, than just the ability to activate Zephyrus, just so he can bail himself out of the situation.
Right.
Finds a cheap Shrink Ray. No direct heal, but what's the best way for Monsanto to get out of this situation? Looks like it might have to be a timeout, and then he will discount Shivala to be 7 mana, which is enough for... Oh, no, it isn't, because Kangor is 5 mana now.
Yes, that is the big problem with what just happened this turn, that expensive Kangor.
Oh, he might need another timeout then from his deck.
I hope you like my invention.
He's found himself a Pyro, so he can start to piece together a board clear now. Depending on what the draw is, that is a very, very cheap combination because of the discounted Shrink Ray, Pyro Shrink. So if he can pick up other options to go alongside that, he might be able to get his board clear down, but he's so low that if he spends a turn board clearing and not healing, he's got to expect that Nalguidan will just be able to kill him over the top at that point.
I wonder.
Yeah, Nalguidan has a few choices on how far he wants to extend onto the board. Doesn't actually have to do too much more than even just his hatchet. It's kind of as you were saying too. You know, Nalguidan can't stop the Shivala rush, so what's the best possible setup afterwards? Is Baited Arrow? But the Baited Arrow can also be direct damage to the face.
Very true.
I also like not using my own weapon to clear. I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I have 3 weapon charges, but 29 is a legitimate breakpoint if they have to Holy Wrath for a Hail Mary attempt.
It is if they've used their Elven Archer, yeah, for sure, which has been used in this matchup. So 29 is about the max 1-turn burst, allowing for Emperor. Of course, Emperor has been played this game, but it was played on curve, so it's unlikely that Monsanto has hit some ideal combo hand that he was interested in.
Sure.
Speaking of hitting ideal things, that Consecration draw has now activated this Zephyrus.
Right, which incidentally, if he does play a Tyrion, lines up directly into the Spell Breaker.
Did not get a removal option for the high main, a transform effect removal. I don't know if that was something he was interested in.
I think the first thing was reading that he needed to heal, right? So it offered him some kind of defensive heal with Holy Wrath. The Tyrion, because of 8 mana. The Mark of the Wild is what's probably the most intriguing.
Yes.
I think if there was 2 minions, it'd probably offer him a Defender of Argus, which is something very popular.
Whoa. I was about to say this doesn't quite line up, but he does have that second 1-cost Baleful Banker hidden over on the left-hand side of his hand that I just haven't been paying attention to up until this point. So yes, I believe Monsanto did play it there, looking for a removal spell, I think ideally, you know, Hex or Polymorph would have been ideal for him in that spot because, you know, no matter what spell you take, you discount Shivala by the same cost of that spell anyway, so the same turn happens regardless. This way he does heal for a little bit more with the Holy Fire, but he does leave the beasts in play that can represent damage coming back.
Yeah, again, it's interesting food for thought, right? Like, if Nalguidan chose to not play the high main, and over the course of 2 turns had the pressure, he would be able to kill them. But then, does that mean Monsanto plays Zephyrus and then just gets, like, lay on hands and then just heals out of the range?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that kind of balance is what makes this matchup very swingy back and forth.
Yep. Nalguidan now having to reset. He cannot just keep going face here while a Shivala is set on the board. Monsanto is now down to 7 cards remaining in his deck, 6 plus that Shivala that he just reshuffled in. And now has the ability to clear the board at 16 instead of the single figures that he was at earlier, which is a much more comfortable spot for him to be in.
Yeah, in fact, even has opportunities to draw with it too. Hammer of Wrath and Consecration is a board clear here. I wonder if in Monsanto's mind, though, getting that breakpoint to 25 is cleaner now that he's used Zephyrus.
Very fair.
And True Silver Champion. So
and one Shivala Banker combination.
Right. So that actually just might be something he needs to go face with, because Consecration only puts his opponent to 26.
I wonder.
Nalguidan does have Ziliax and a handful of mechs, but clearly not going to be in the hand, and might not even be what determines the outcome of this game, given that he has Ragnaros ready to go.
So Monsanto can choose to do it all here if he would like to. He's going to go Pyromancer line instead, interesting. He could have chosen to be mana efficient there with the Consecration. This does give him outs to continue to draw a play from the rest of his deck. Does get rewarded with the Blood Mage Thalnos off the top. Nicely done from Monsanto. Opponent at 25 left himself the opportunity to draw another play from his deck and was rewarded with that Blood Mage Thalnos.
I feel like we've seen Ragnaros versus 1/1s many times in the past.
Your magic shall not.
I think it's a big part of the reason why Rag potentially isn't having as big an impact as people might have expected. Because, you know, on the other side, your opponent is playing the card Desert Hair and various other, you know, token-based shenanigans that's really weakening your ability for Ragnaros to find crucial targets.
Yeah, exactly. Timeout in the hand. 4 cards. That Blood Mage Thalnos not drawing is a pretty big deal.
It is.
Monsanto doesn't even have the out of Shivala and a Baleful Banker potentially to go for Holy Wrath. It would make it the last 4 cards. One of them is Holy Wrath, one of them is Shivala.
He has a second Consecration in there as well, I believe.
That would make sense.
And another card.
Second Prismatic Lens.
Let's move quickly.
So those are the 4 cards remaining. I do like this timeout a lot. Big respect for what could be done, and then utilize Consecration Equality. Trying to buy as many turns as possible.
Yeah, trying to force the healing from this Crystal Smith Kangor this turn, because Nalguidan has no opportunity to just go over the top and end the game. So because timeout is played, because Nalguidan has no option to push damage, he has to respect the Kangor, which guarantees the healing from Monsanto. Then he can go into his clear turn. Then he's odds on to have drawn a card draw card from that point to be able to empty his deck and go for the lethal on the following turn. So it's a very, very nice 3-turn setup for Monsanto from this point. You mentioned the card draw from the Blood Mage Thalnos being silenced. The spell damage from the Blood Mage Thalnos being silenced was also very relevant on the previous turn as well.
You are 100% correct. And also, you know, small things too. Like, Nalguidan now is still in range of Holy Wrath, even if he does draw Zillion. He's going to have another mech, right? And this Replicated Menace high chance it ends up biting the dust. Because Nalguidan needs 2 attacks to go into this Crystal Smith Cannon Core, which means 3-1 also dies.
It's a sad world when you have 10 mana, 2 cards in hand, and your play is not Ragnaros the Fire Lord.
I mean, Monsanto has a nice consecration setup here. There's no need for him to Holy Wrath unnecessarily, even though he does have a 33% chance to win right now.
Reporting for duty.
It's Ragnaros time.
Just get the cursor, rub it over your opponent's face. We all know how this works.
Hitting the face for 8, that might seem good, although I guess with the consecration draw number 2, it didn't matter. I was wondering, like, if he hits the 1-1, would he actually be that upset?
Sure. I mean, okay, so your Rag would live for an extra turn against equality, is what you're saying, but it gets the opportunity to deal 8 damage the next turn, which is just what you did this turn. Like, yep. I think it's very similar.
Very similar across the board. From Nalguidan's perspective, with the Diner Timber Brand already used with Kill Command and
Let me think.
even the Baited Arrow, there's not much direct damage from Nalguidan's deck remaining here.
There is a Zephrys.
There's a Zephrys, there's an Animal Companion potentially. That's about it. Monsanto debating the 50-50?
Yep. I think 50-50 is a big talking point here. I think using the Consecration or not to protect your 1-1 is a big talking point here as well. Nothing that you can do stops Zephrys being lethal here, because Hero Power Zephrys Avenging Wrath kills you no matter what happens. Hero Power Zephrys Fireball kills you no matter what happens. So you don't have the opportunity to play around those outcomes.
Tough beat here for Nalguidan. The Mecha does absolutely nothing. And the aggressive build of the mech form of Highlander Hunter not paying off here for Nalguidan. I can't even think if he magnetized once this game.
I don't think he did.
Yeah, and he drew a lot of the magnetic minions. Sure, Stim Snap and Ziliax. And even then, Ziliax wouldn't be enough in this spot.
Yep.
Monsanto, with this play, has realized what's going on, and so that's going to be game number 1.
Cards.
Over to Monsanto. Oh, just kidding. What
There's
am
a
I
card
talking
left.
about? There is a card left. Why did I think there's only 1 card left?
I thought for a second you knew something I didn't. I was just double-checking everything I knew about this game.
I, for some reason, thought that he had 1 card left in the deck. I guess I was miscounting. Either way, is there a punish for Monsanto to play the Shirvala right now?
I mean, he would still lose the game to Zephrys either way, I imagine. Like, he would just lose the game to Zephrys clearing his board as opposed to Zephrys being lethal.
Got it.
It's almost the same, and regardless, that Mekaru has a Spider Bomb on it right now, which is pretty terrifying to be able to play your Shirvala into. So I guess if this is coming down, it means Monsanto is taking his 50-50 to win the game right now.
Yes.
This was my question mark over the Consecration usage last turn, by the way, is that there was a world where I felt like that Consecration was potentially useful to bridge the gap between this turn and your lethal turn, just to be able to clear the board. I think that was a really tough decision. We have to make, he does whiff. So now he is going to have to win this game with just the tempo of his Shirvalas. That is a huge roll for Monsanto. For that first Tiger to still be alive, but now there's a tracking for Nalguidan. Monsanto reacts exactly as you would expect, but none of those cards are a Zephrys.
Yeah, and Monsanto still doesn't have the damage, I believe.
Nope.
There's only
10 on
the
board.
So Shimmerfly or even the Venomizer. Oh, Nalguidan. Putting his hope in the butterfly.
Job's done.
Except this butterfly does not know confusion.
I'm out of cards.
Shivala number 2. Monsanto has a choice to make, actually, here. How much he wants to commit to the board. If he holds on to this Shivala in hand, at the very least, Monsanto still has a backup option while still presenting a 2-turn lethal.
Correct. My instinct is to say that you don't play the second Shivala here, because the only card I can imagine you lose to here is Zephyrus into Twisting Nether, right?
Even then, you still might win.
Sure, because you get to press 1/1s and just
they can't do anything.
Right, but they're at that point they're on Zephyrus Twisting Nether into just top deck cards good enough to beat you, which I think is a very real world, especially while you're fatiguing. So because that world exists, I think you hold on to this second Shivala so that you have another 7/5 Tiger in the world where that happens.
Okay, so this spell off the Shimmerfly has big implications if Nalguidan can potentially stay alive here. Arcane Shot's good enough. That gives CMI the ability to clear the board. Which he needs to do, I think, because there's no way that he can place CMI just as a taunt.
Yeah, he could. So Arcane Shot the 2/2, rush, taunt into the 1/1, but then he knows the second Tiger comes out from hand to clear the taunt, and the first Shivala kills him, so he has to take the board clear here. It's the only way he lives this turn.
This one's so close.
And you see the punish, right, when you do start to get cubed. I was fully in agreement with this play. I did not want the top deck Zephyrus to come out and have my board go down, but against the world that existed, the Arcane Shot into the Siamat draw, the second Tiger on board would have ended up potentially being lethal.
Nalguidan has 8 cards in his deck, and it has things like Animal Companion, it has Zephyrus, it even has Call of the Wild.
Yes.
It's time to test your metal.
Yeah, Shivala summarized this game. What do you got, Nalguidan? 1 draw, 1 hope.
Call of the Wild!
But he has to trade into the 1/1.
Trade into the 1/1. That's so sad. Look, this might be against everyone's principles to trade a Huffer into a 1/1, but if it wins the game, it wins the game. And now, this Shivala goes into the Misha, the Huffer kills the Shivala, the 2/4 kills the 1/1. Nalguidan has control of this game forever from this point. It is over. Now, that draw won the game for Nalguidan.
Yeah, no Zul'jin necessary, I guess. In fact, Zul'jin probably would have done a lot of worse things because he had direct damage that was just thrown into the mix. He might have killed himself.
He just baited arrows himself in the face, ends the game.
Yeah, actually, that probably would have been a much worse scenario, so.
I don't see it. Monsanto is going to spend this turn thinking about everything that he can.
I think he might be considering if there's a series of pan-out draws, if Nalguidan could fatigue, because he would have to survive 8 turns, and is not unlikely. I mean, he is going to gain 7, or at least go back to full life.
Yes, he is already fatiguing for 3 next turn, plus the Hunter Hero power at a bare minimum.
Yeah, the quality of cards, too, remaining in the deck is still pretty sizable. There's a Houndmaster Shaw and a Sniff Snap and a Zilliax. So I don't think that's possible anymore.
Yeah, I said it and I stand by it. I believe this game is 100% solved from this situation. Monsanto does not find the line. That was an absolute marathon, but that smiling man was the one who got over the line in the end. Whew, Highlander Hunter just picking up that win against Holy Wrath Paladin, but it did not look anywhere near as simple as we might have predicted it to be.
Yeah, that's right. And I think those kinds of defeats are the hardest to digest because Monsanto was 1 damage off. And if there was like any point in the game where he feels like he could have maybe squeezed in a little bit more damage, vice versa, obviously I think the most prevalent thing to think about is the 50% chance to win right there and then.
Yes.
But like, you know, if you don't get it, were there any other opportunities to push damage?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not, but I think those things are just really haunting for a lot of players as they go to the next game.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points, like him choosing to equality and consecrate the Rag instead of just a quality trade. That would have meant that he then had a consecration for the next turn, which potentially could have cleared that next board, the board that he ended up taking the 50-50 into because he just couldn't answer just a 3-3 in play.
Right.
So I think that's potentially worth looking at. And even though, like, my instinct, which I called out, completely agreed with the idea of holding that second Shivala, of course, in results-oriented world, he got punished for it. So did he do those calculations correctly? I believe he still had lethal his way through Call of the Wild. He still had lethal, or he still had a good position against Zephyrus Twisting Nether or Zephyrus whatever removal it ends up being. So I think there were more cards that his way was good against than bad against. But again, like you said, when you lose a game like that, those are the positions that you examine over and over again. Right. Did I make the wrong decision? Did it cost me in this position?
That's right. That's right. Like, I mean, in the end, he took a 50% chance to win, which in hindsight may have actually lowered his chances to actually win with the actual pan out.
Not to mention, he even started that turn with a 50% chance to win because he could have drawn the not Shivala card and had guaranteed lethal on that turn anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. It was an opportunity. And looking at the rest of the cards in Nalguidan's deck from the pan out, there wasn't really that many things outside of Zephyrus to punish him, except for another magnetic minion, which I think would have been another threatening thing. So it's a tough position to say for Monsanto, right? Like, because I think we can obviously use that result-oriented thing and just think, you had a better chance to win if you just held.
Nope.
Not really the case.
Nope, zero criticism. I'm just highlighting some turns that I think are talking points, and I think turns that will be examined when he inevitably goes through and sort of does his post-game detox of the situation. And if he considers that he made all the right decisions, then so be it.
Agreed. Going to game number 2, we have Malygos Druid versus the Holy Wrath Paladin. Two of the most prominent combo decks in the game. That's been bolstered by Emperor Thaurissan.
Yes.
Emperor Thaurissan being pretty valuable to the Holy Wrath Paladin. I feel like with the Druid, it hasn't actually been as impressive for me when I've been having those scenarios, largely because I don't know. I just never really felt like it was a big defining thing that helped me win the game.
I'm inclined to agree with you. We've kind of seen this story with Druid, where Emperor was just a card that was played not specifically because it enabled any crazy combos, but it's just because Druid is a deck that really leverages mana cheat very well, and they wanted to just continue down that line. But when you look at Malygos Druid, when they put Emperor in there as well, you already have Dream Petal Florist. You already have the option to floop your Dream Petal Florist. You already have Geppetto Joybuzz, and then you're putting an Emperor Thaurissan in there as well. Like, does your Malygos really need to cost minus 15 mana? Like, that does not seem important to executing the game plan.
Yeah, and also because things like Moonfire are already 0, so in terms of like increasing your range, I think the one thing...
Yeah, you play 5 0-mana cards in your deck.
The one exception might be Swipe. Because if you do discount Swipe, you might be able to squeeze in some really ridiculous plays. But I digress. Let's find out if Nalguidan has a pocket that he can utilize that Emperor Thaurissan very effectively. Kuhn the Forgotten King, just a pretty solid card overall. And that armor gain, potentially very useful in this matchup.
Yeah, obviously it's the absolute nuts in this matchup. Not only does it represent huge pressure, but it also represents 10 armor gain. We talked a lot during the regular season about the dynamic in this matchup, where playing 2 Ferocious Howls was important, and the 2 Ferocious Howl Druid with an otherwise aggressive list was favored against Paladin. This is Malygos Druid, which is about the most aggressive form that you can have. Like, you're threatening huge burst damage from hand on any given turn. He does have those 2 Ferocious Howls, does Nalguidan, and then he also has that burst armor from Kun coming through as well.
Pyromancer has an opportunity to draw a card here from Monsanto by activating his Acolyted Pain. It is somewhat of a commitment though, because Pyromancer plus AoE spell is a nice way to deal with Druid board. But this is not the traditional Druid board that plays Cenarius, that plays King Phaeorus. Although if you asked Nalguidan a couple weeks ago, he actually did both.
Did he really?
He had a King Phaeorus in his Malygos deck.
But King Phaeorus and a Cenarius in his...
Oh, no, just a King Phaeorus.
I got confused by that. I know some people have played one or the other at certain points, but both would have been insane to me.
Right. I meant the Malygos and the King
Right.
But it was a very funny thing because he summoned like 3 Wisps, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, it seemed weird to me in a deck that's just so much about managing your hand contents so that you can duplicate the right hand in a lot of key matchups. To just have a big, expensive 9 or 10 mana card that you can't play, like that just seemed really, really bizarre to me. It always has. I do like this cycle. I think, honestly, if Monsanto is going to be successful in this matchup, he has to race to the bottom of his deck as quickly as he possibly can. Essentially, he wants to hit the bottom of his deck before Nalguidan has reached the point where his Highlander cards are active. Because then at least he has an opportunity to try and race the armor game. But if he takes too long, Nalguidan is able to just play a bunch of Nourishes, duplicate some Ferocious Howls, duplicate some Kuns, worst case scenario, then there's just no world where you're getting through all that amount of armor.
Monsanto was hoping that the Pyromancer could stay on the board, but unlikely because Nalguidan needed to finish the quest anyways.
Yeah.
Monsanto has the ability, I guess, to Flash of Light the Acolyte, but
Let me
anything
think.
else pretty flashy. This might be a full mana expenditure through Hammer of Wrath.
Well, when you say
anything
full
else.
mana expenditure, Dan, there is an option that draws a card that spends all of his mana this turn.
You're right.
I actually saw Tice do this in Europe Grandmasters in this exact matchup, which was a decision I was quite critical of, and he spoke to me afterwards and kind of defended his position and said, like, this is Malagos Druid. Like, you have to go really fast. They have the option to just burst you down, and said that he kind of liked the line that he took, but I think in this scenario, like, I think when you add Kun to the deck as well, it just becomes kind of ridiculous to expect to ever be able to end this matchup with one Holy Wrath as the Paladin.
Yeah, I guess it really does depend on how fast you're able to cycle your deck too. Some decks have like the Solid's Pride and the Loot Hoarders.
Yes.
So that it might allow you to justify drawing really fast. But, part of the things that I feel like is people do start to be conservative with their Holy Wraths. And then what that ends up letting Druid do is have the time to be able to assemble their armor combo. So I've heard it both ways, right? Where, like, if you draw slower, you're giving your opponent the chance to assemble the combo to get out of the 50 range.
Just plays the Emperor on curve here. Does Monsanto is going to use it to fight for the board a little bit, just allow him to be a little bit more efficient. Looks like he is happy doing what he needs to do over 2 turns instead of waiting for the perfect combo so he can do it in 1.
Yeah. Nalguidan has his own Emperor right now, and his Emperor curves out into things like Geppetto Joybuzz, but with too many minions still left in the deck, Crystal Merchants, Anubis Defenders.
Right.
It just feels like it's better to Nourish draw right now as opposed to get those free 1/1s off the Geppetto Joybuzz.
There is always a slight worry, I think, when you cast a Nourish in a spot like that of, yes, you want to play Nourish on 6. Like, imagine not wanting 3 extra cards and 2 extra mana next turn. But you always also want to be efficient and be able to spend that mana that you get immediately on something beneficial. And even before Nalguidan cast the Nourish and drew the Wrath, I believe he already had this Innovate Loti line available to him. So I think it's a very good turn to Nourish.
Well, to start things off, Novice Engineer to draw a card could definitely work out here. Monsanto has to do some hand management as well, make sure that if he does hit things like Prismatic Lens, how does he spend his mana accordingly?
He's still only halfway through his deck on turn 7. Still 15 cards remaining.
Right. What's the best way to expend his mana? If he gets too greedy, is he just going to die? Like, if he does leave up 2 Oasis Surgers, is 10 too few?
You are scared of 12. That's the number. Like, that's without any kind of signal from your opponent. And by signal, I mean they play Geppetto, they play a Floop. Oh, sorry, they play a Dream Petal Florist. Something that signals to you that they can do significant damage. Or even they play a Malagos. If they play a Malagos, they can have the Flooped Malagos in hand for extra damage. So without being given that signal by the opponent, the most they're going to add to the board is Malagos Double Moonfire, just straight up for 12. And so I think that is a range that you try and hover outside of for as long as possible in Monsanto's position.
Ferocious Howl, potential important card here. Assuming we get to that stage of the game.
Yep. I was about to say, crucially, this Shrink Ray means the Wrath kills the Kangor straight up, but with the spell damage on board, that was always going to happen anyway, so nothing lost there from Monsanto's side. And then Nalguidan says Emperor time, and I do like this because you can rewind your mind to, you know, Emperor Thaurissan versus Freeze Mage, which was a similar combo deck that was around at the time where we originally had Thaurissan. And sometimes just Emperor being in play made them cast removal because it's this kind of board objective persistent effect, you know, very similar to Ragnaros in that regard, where they can't just freeze it, they can't ignore it. In the equivalent state here with Paladin, Paladin can't just like time out and ignore this board because Emperor Thaurissan offers just so much ridiculous upside to the opponent if they even let it live. Really important card in the matchup.
It's true. Perhaps just the threat of Thaurissan getting out of control.
Yeah, just the pressure that it represents. Just make your opponent have to make uncomfortable decisions.
Yeah, because then when things like, you know, Swipe and Ferocious Howl become virtually free,
Yes.
that just becomes a scary world. So Monsanto
Quickly.
using a quality consecration, I think it's completely justified. I think he is expecting a Hidden Oasis play to follow this up.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of damage has been done straight up to Nalguidan's health total, which means that cards like Hidden Oasis are very active. But that was always going to be the case because since Monsanto has bailed on the 50 in 1 turn plan, he's almost always going to do some health damage to Nalguidan at one point and activate that Hidden Oasis back up to 30.
Doing some inventory of what's left in the deck minion-wise. We have a Crystal Merchant, we have a Flabindus Flute, Elise, Anubisat Defender, Coon, and Malagos.
Whoa.
Elise being 1 mana is really nice. It just
That is
means at the
fantastic.
very minimum you have 24 damage through Malagos.
Yes.
Assuming you have the hand space to do it. Wow, throw in the Ferocious Howl too.
Yeah, I think with that pickup of the Elise, I think he understands that he can just be aggressive in this position as well, which I very much agree with. I think maybe I've paid too much attention to the defensive plan from Nalguidan and not really factoring in the extra kicker that this is Malagos Druid. Like, he can just end the game at any given point.
Exactly. That's why I like this variant a lot better than the Holy Wrath Paladin, especially with Coon, to just give you that extra life burst so that way you can utilize it. I mean, I'm starting to realize how nutty it would be if the Geppetto Joy Buzz has hit the Coon. I haven't had that happen yet.
Just hits Elise Kun, and then he's like, all right, nice. Let's start duping these.
It's almost kind of like Twig of the Willow Tree comes back into the metagame when you hit the Geppetto Joy Buzz on the Coon.
I wonder.
Monsanto looks like he's in deep trouble right now.
Agreed. It's in a horrible spot. His hand is stalled. He can't draw cards without sacrificing 25 potential damage 10 out of 11 times.
Move quickly.
11 cards remaining in the deck. Be 11 out of 12 even, in fact. Just has to play the Shivala and shuffle it. Wow.
Oh, Nalguidan with this play being on the opposite side of the board probably recognizes what kind of position he's in, which is a very good one.
Yes, indeed. Still missing at least 1 activator for this Elise.
Right. Part of me makes me wonder if it's okay to just simply start committing other resources like the other Ferocious Howl, given that your opponent just used 1 Baleful Banker, so that's minus 25.
Right.
I think maybe in his mind he might still need to hold on to it. I also like the idea of just playing the other Crystal Merchant and just getting closer to ending the game.
Yeah, for sure. So at least Starfall that he needs to draw from this point. I also like that Elise active. Yeah, I think Hidden Oasis definitely happens at some point sooner rather than later, just because it is so efficient. Almost perfect efficiency there because of all the early game damage that Monsanto was dealing.
Right. Also, using the left side of your hand.
Yes.
Very important. So that way the Elise, when it does become active, can be useful.
He does draw a couple of whiffs there with the Pounce and the Innovate, but luckily he will take 0 mana cards here because he can at least dump them very quickly from his hand to make room for that Elise when the Starfall draw is found, if that is the only card he needs to activate.
I wonder.
Like, what does this hand do from Monsanto? Like, find me a line, because I don't see it.
Does he have to take a very risky 10%er right now? One of these 10 cards is Cheval, and he has 2 Holy Wraths. Like,
Yes.
each draw, like the reason why he's not ripping the Novice, I think he's actually considering it. At what point
I hope you
do you
like
feel
my
like you had to take that risk?
Quickly.
Crystology draws nothing. He goes for it, the
He
1 and
rips
9,
it.
11%. Nope, gets a second timeout. That is bad news here for Monsanto.
And unless Monsanto can now come up with something incredibly creative,
Reporting for duty.
that could very well just be game for Nalguidan on that 25 damage missing. There is the Starfall, there is the active Elise now, the Ferocious Howl in hand. Nalguidan has a variety of ways he can go about winning this game from this position, but that Elise being active is now the key to all of them.
Yeah, Ferocious Howl can be used. Coon the Forgotten King. I mean, you don't really need this swipe. You don't really need the Starfall. Would be nice to hold something just in case your opponent does a Shrivala push. We have seen some Druids lose in Grandmasters because they just can't stop the 7/5s.
Yes,
Wonder.
that is where Monsanto's head is going to have to be at right now, and it is Nalguidan has to absolutely recognize that is the only way he is now losing, and just make sure that he has adequate removal to take care of those. If you just heard me laughing, it's because I moused over on our spectator. Nalguidan is actually drawing cards faster than the Holy Wrath Paladin this game. He has 7 cards remaining in his deck to Monsanto's 8. I guess the good news for Monsanto is that means that he's winning fatigue.
Zephyr's not even active.
Yikes.
Yeah, I think Monsanto really needed some kind of Hail Mary, but that's going to do it. Nalguidan
Oh.
2-0, decisively crushing OTK Paladin with Reno Hunter and Malagos Druid. Little unconventional takes. Neither of those decks are super popular across all 3 regions, but the unique lineup here from Nalguidan really paying off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Hunter was a pretty good option. I tweeted earlier in the week that I felt like the Highlander aggro decks were represented across the board. I think maybe the GMs were just a week or 2 late to the uptake, because you can look at the stats of like Highlander deck of any variety versus Priest. They basically all have a favorable win rate in that matchup. Priest in this format, I think those Highlander decks were potentially the answer. But it is much more complex than that. It's about building a well-rounded lineup, and a lot of people have said to me that even though they know Control Warrior has a bad win rate, what it does for their lineup and what it makes their opponent do in terms of queue order and what decks they're not allowed to bring because they know their opponent might have Control Warrior, like all that kind of stuff, that it's still worth that equity in the long run, which is like a really weird stance to me. But when it was sort of explained, I did sort of start to see the light on it a little bit. But we got a bit far away from the original point there, which was Highlander Hunter, I think, is a very, very smart bring to this playoffs.
All right, so with that, Nalguidan will be advancing to the winners match to play Eddie. That's coming up next here on the Hearthstone Grandmasters for the playoffs of America. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.